Hi everyone, welcome to Here We Are, Brattleboro's community talk show. I'm Wendy O'Connell, and we're back in the studio again with a guest from the community. Today it is Tim Wessel. Tim is a filmmaker and videographer. He's an accomplished producer, cinematographer, editor, and audio engineer, among other things. He's the owner of Vermont Films and was on the production team of House Hunters, something that a lot of you folks have probably heard about. It's a first-of-its-kind reality TV show on HGTV. Tim was also the subject of one show about his hunt for a home in Brattleboro. It's very fun and entertaining, and you should look it up to take a look. Tim was on the Brattleboro Selectboard for 6 years, and he was on the BCTV board, that's Brattleboro Community Television Board, for 11 years. And in 2022, he made a run for the Vermont State Senate. Thank you, Tim, for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Yeah.
I'm honored.
Well, we are honored to have you on. You're such a busy guy doing so many different things in town. To start off, you were born in New Jersey.
I was actually born in Virginia.
Virginia?
Yeah.
Even further south.
We didn't go that far back in our preamble. But yeah, further south, and then moved to New Jersey when I was 13.
And that was southern New Jersey?
Yes, in Ocean City, New Jersey. That's known as America's greatest family resort.
Oh, really? So is it near Cape May?
It is near Cape May,
is,
about 40 minutes north.
Oh, that's close. Plus you're close to Philadelphia.
Absolutely.
Actually, right?
Yep.
Did you do much urban exploring?
Growing up, yeah, I saw, part of my formation was to see some amazing bands from the 80s in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
And that was where we would go to see most of the bands. Or Atlantic City, which is much closer.
Oh, you were in a good location.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And your family, can you talk a little bit about your family?
Wow. My mom raised 6 kids.
Holy cow, I didn't know.
I was the last of 6. And not on her own, but pretty much at times, because my father was a 40-year Air Force veteran, and he also was a spy, frankly, and he served Air Force intelligence. He served in World War II, Korea, and Vietnam, pretty much all before I came along, because I was born in '67, and
Yes.
the family traveled all over the world until that point, and then in '67 onward, pretty much stayed near Washington, D.C., where he was stationed outside the Pentagon.
And did he have stories to tell?
He certainly did.
Yeah, I bet.
Some of them were only partial stories because most of it was classified.
Yeah, yeah.
But as the years went on, he told us more and more stories, which
Yeah.
were pretty entertaining.
Oh, I'll bet it was pretty fascinating. Inside look.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so in the course of going to school and having many other different influences, I'm sure you got pretty interested in film.
Yes. My interest in film goes pretty far back to when I saw Jaws with my mother. I think I was 11 or 12, probably too early to see Jaws. And then came some very formative, very hugely influential films as I grew up, which, like E.T. and Star Wars and Raiders of the Lost Ark and all those. Yeah. So I basically wanted to be Steven Spielberg at that point, or George Lucas perhaps. And that started my love of film and video production.
And your interest was in production, though. It wasn't about starring roles.
Absolutely. Yeah, I never have been comfortable in front of the camera, which was reinforced to me when I started House Hunters in 2014. Really didn't like it at all. But, through my years on the select board, I got used to being in front of cameras quite a bit. And
quite a bit.
Yep.
Those meetings could go on for quite a while.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We'll get to that. We'll get to the select board.
Sure.
You went to Ithaca College, which is really strong for film, right?
Absolutely.
And music, I believe.
Yeah. Music and film are the two things that Ithaca College at the time was really, really known for.
Mm-hmm. Did you like it there?
I loved Ithaca College. Yeah, terrific place. Yeah. I always tell people, when it comes to film, it's not always where you go to study, but you have to have a culture, a community that really gets excited about it. And both the television and radio program and the film program at Ithaca is really excellent and a great community. And the area is beautiful.
Oh, it's
Finger
so
Lakes
beautiful.
region.
Yeah, it's really beautiful. And it's not that big a school either, right?
No, although I understand it's gotten much bigger since I've been
Yeah,
gone.
I
which
know.
is a long time ago.
It's not really that. I could beat you on that one, I'll tell you. So you continued your move north and ended up in the Brattleboro area. How'd you do that?
Yeah, wow. That's a long story, which I'm sure we don't have time for because it's only a half an hour-ish program.
We're going to start doing documentaries.
But basically moved up here with my ex-wife and adopted son from New Jersey, and built a house in the woods off the grid using a 16-foot travel trailer. We just threw it, sold most of our possessions and moved to the woods.
Wow.
And that's how we landed in the area. And then, of course, Brattleboro was always the town we'd come to, and the satellite, which we orbited it around.
But there wasn't any particular reason for coming to the Brattleboro area for you?
It was simply that we had discovered a piece of property that we really loved, and we couldn't afford anything down south. And back in the day, property was pretty, this was 1999.
Yeah.
Property was pretty inexpensive compared to anything in New Jersey. So.
Yeah. And where did you get your building skills?
At the very early formation of the internet and YouTube and books. Yes.
Really?
We had no prior building knowledge.
Oh my gosh. So, and it was the two of you together doing this?
Yep, absolutely.
Unbelievable.
The three of us. So.
And so you were off the grid, so you were solar?
Yep, solar powered. We had times when the neighbors would lose power and we wouldn't know for days because we had our own issues with being off the grid.
Right.
But it wasn't lack of power at any time.
How many years did you do that?
That was a total of about 7 to 8 years before I moved. After a divorce, I moved to Brattleboro.
Coming to the area, there was enough of the community that drew you, and you kind of plugged in, as you say, you plugged in early to Brattleboro Community Television.
Absolutely.
And what did you do?
I first started just volunteering, doing what they're doing behind the scenes here on the show, and covering the camera work for the Brattleboro Selectboard.
Yeah.
And that I found was a wonderful way to plug in because I learned about all of the issues that the community was facing at the time, and it's impossible to not have an opinion when you're behind a camera. You just don't express that opinion so much.
Yeah.
So I think that was the very beginning of like, my father always served, my brothers served in the military, my father in the military, and our family does tend to find a way to serve the community. And that was one of the first times I thought, well, this is a way I really would like to serve the community.
Yes.
It's possibly in local political office. So even back in the early aughts, as I call them, I was thinking that I could make a run for the select board if I were to ever move to Brattleboro.
Interesting, because I know that there are a few cameramen, Nolan Edgar, who's our content manager, Austin Rice, who have gotten involved in the community that way because they have witnessed not only the issues, but what it takes to be able to work with a group of people. And for you, it sounds like you got a lot of mediating skills.
The way I would put it is patience, the ability to hear people's opinions while retaining, your own grounding to what's important to you. The mediation didn't really come into play until I served as chair. That was in 2020. The ability to listen and to weigh different options and to think about policy. Yeah. To convert personal into policy is a challenge for some people. Often, if you're paying attention to what's going on in local politics or a simple debate about what we should do about an issue that the community is having, it's not uncommon for you to think, well, I would have reacted differently to that. And that's a motivation for anyone to get involved in local decision making. And what happens is once you insert yourself into that position, you rapidly become hyper-educated about the issue. And you usually find out that it's not quite as simple as you thought it was going to be.
Right.
Which doesn't always mean that you change opinions.
Right.
It's very healthy to change opinions. So I always enjoy those moments where I'm like, I think my opinion is changing, and that's an exciting moment for everyone, I think, or scary.
Right.
But I think there is huge value in exercising your brain and your personal patience and trying to serve
widening your view as well. I think
Absolutely.
that's a huge part, and I think that for many of us over the last 5 or 6 years or so have had to do that over and over again, including the pandemic as well,
Sure.
and accommodating things that we never had to before, understanding what it's like for other people. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, and the pandemic, you mentioned the pandemic. It's very strange because it's the pandemic moment, which is when it was the first time the Brattleboro Selectboard went to an all remote. And no one, if you recall, no one around the state had been doing this yet.
I didn't know that.
No, the Selectboard actually, Brattleboro Selectboard actually sort of took the charge in the state, figuring out how we're going to do this remotely successfully. So we established a pretty good model that was copied around the state, and then later a model for how to make it hybrid that actually was successful as well, because the difficulty with going remote was access, with people getting the same people or more people or as many people as possible getting access to their own democracy and democratic voice. So that was a moment where we became chair, and literally the next meeting was a remote meeting after we figured out some bugs with the help of BCTV and CORE and all that crew. So that was precisely in the middle of my 6 years.
Yeah.
So my 6 years were bifurcated by the COVID event.
Before and after, yeah.
Before and after.
Yeah.
So in many ways, and I think a lot of people share this feeling with me, there's post-COVID and there's pre-COVID.
Yeah.
And that's true with politics too, to a certain extent.
And our whole way of life in so many different kinds of ways. Talking about the skills that you developed as a mediator, you did refer to Buddhism as philosophy, and taking from that a certain attitude, a certain demeanor.
Yeah. I would refer to the middle way sometimes. That's sort of a Buddhist idea that the middle path is often the path that you can take to make progress, but not make it so quickly that the progress won't stick. Those are just my take on it.
Yeah.
I think often there were a lot of community members that got frustrated with that, belief from me and my methodology of trying to take a path that brought as many people along the way to the direction that we mostly wanted to go. I say mostly as in most of the people.
Right.
Because you're never going to have everyone happy with your direction.
That's right.
And that's okay too, because
right.
that's what elections are for.
Yes. And I've said this on the show at various times, I think that the size of our community is such that it makes a lot of things possible. If it were much bigger, things would become unwieldy, and it would have a different structure to it.
Well, I do agree with you that this community, for me and my family, and is all about being the right size.
Yeah.
But that does come with a certain amount of frustrations. On the local level, we have sort of a constraint when it comes to the size of our tax base, the amount of resources we have to solve issues that we have. The resources for the amount of people we have here in the state possibly aren't as rich as there are in a place like North Carolina, Florida, but democracy thrives in a community this size, I think. So that's the other side of it. That it's a really great size for keeping people involved, the spirit of volunteerism, service to the community.
Voices being able to be heard.
Absolutely. Yeah, because politics, in New Jersey is a very different thing.
Yes.
Like
I'll bet.
Night and day.
Brattleboro Community TV. As you say, you got plugged in early and quite a while ago now.
Absolutely. Fell in love.
You fell in love.
With BCTV.
Well, if you could talk a little bit about that, I think that having a community TV station is one of our hidden treasures. You know, it's not that it's hidden, but I think that a lot of folks don't realize what an incredible resource it is. So you've kind of been on both sides of that.
Yeah, yeah, and I really got involved. You know, I mentioned learning a lot about local politics and realizing I wanted to serve in that way by being a camera person at the select board meetings. But the reason to jump into the board and really become involved for me was the democratization of video and how I knew that the more people who are involved in and pick up a camera and try to express themselves through a medium that was growing and is still growing in many different kinds of ways, sort of like shorter format ways right now if you look at the internet. But it's a very powerful tool. And it can have, if you feel like your voice is very small, you can harness these tools, all these tools that we see around us right here. And really, like you're doing right now, you're
have your own show.
Voices.
You can have your own show.
Absolutely.
I tell people that all the time.
And I tried my hand at a few different shows.
Yep. Yes. So, speaking of Naked Brattleboro.
Naked Brattleboro, which my friend Frederick and I came up with a concept for right around the time you know, YouTube was just catching on, and so was this huge controversy had just passed with the Brattleboro Selectboard ultimately deciding to make nudity downtown illegal. So Naked Brattleboro is this, you know, tongue-in-cheek wink at drawing those eyes in, and it certainly worked if you looked back then at the YouTube numbers. But what we were doing was just going around and talking to people and highlighting different artists and highlighting businesses even, but not in a sort of promotional way, in a kind of fun way.
A lot of fun. It looks like you guys had a blast.
We did have a blast, because one of Frederick's innovations was just putting a microphone in someone's face and saying, "What's your deal?"
Right.
And the range of answers we would get to that question, I was amazed. I thought, this is obnoxious. Nobody really wants to be asked that. But it turns out a lot of people thrived on it.
Yeah.
And they would answer in surprising and delightful ways.
Man in the street, you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a great format.
Yeah,
you know, and there are people who can really pull it up. And this is Frederick Noyes that we're referring to. Yes, you were quite a duo. You were mostly behind the camera.
Mostly, because as I said, I'm not a big fan of being in front.
Right. So. Let's talk about House Hunters. Well, first of all, you have produced or worked on teams from some amazing shows, including Animal Planet, the Discovery Channel, the Learning Channel, National Geographic, PBS, Smithsonian Museum of Natural History, Sundance Channel, Vermont Public Television, and more locally as well. So you've worked, again, in terms of working with other people, you've been on different kinds of teams doing various things.
Back in 2011, when we formed Vermont Films Group, it was my good friend and associate Daniel Lyons, Emmy Award-winning director of photography, just a wonderful, really talented guy. We teamed up in Brattleboro and started Vermont Films together back then. He brought a lot of those clients to the party for us. I began to work with House Hunters back then, actually a little bit before we got together as a team. And first I started doing audio for House Hunters, and then I did camera for House Hunters. And we did that for years. And then I started to look for a house in Brattleboro. This is back in 2013, and I thought, I know some producers. Let me see if I can try to talk them into letting me be on the show. And they were open to it, but we were still required to go through the application process. So, and we had a different take on it. It was going to be me as a single person, as I was back then, looking with a friend of mine who ended up being Frederick Noyes again. And so they bought it. And
you bought it.
Yeah.
One of those houses you bought.
Exactly. Yeah. And it wasn't, a wholly comfortable experience for me because just imagine if you're familiar with being a camera person and being an audio person, and now your talent, as we say, you're going to be trying to tell the producer what their job is And the producer didn't like that very much.
Oh.
But good thing that she was a very good friend of ours.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
I thought it was great, and it was so much fun to watch. And the process, it's very captivating.
It is.
Hence, it being such a popular show.
It is.
Yeah.
It falls into the category of my life, like I loved doing it and I'll never do it again.
Well, you've got the house too,
Exactly.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
You've got a house with a big yard in town, which is amazing.
Still there. Although you just spoiled the you spoiled the game on House Hunters to guess which house you pick.
I can edit this out. We'll let
Or
the
not,
audience-
because that's kind of funny too.
So this past fall, Tim, you ran for state senate as an independent.
Absolutely.
And can you talk a little bit about that choice?
The choice to go independent was not an easy one. I lean Democratic. As one of the current Democratic lawmakers kept telling me, it's a big tent within the Democratic Party. So I certainly could have gone that route. And I decided to go independent because I had a lot of friends and a lot of people I talked to saw me in my role on the Brattleboro Selectboard as somebody who could listen to any idea and to help people get voice to that idea, and to not just turn my back to any left or right or whatever, to any concern. So running as an independent started to appeal to me on a level that really felt like what I should be doing, even though I knew it was going to be a bigger hill to climb for that race, especially for the Senate race.
Yeah.
In Vermont, you can talk the talk of being totally one side, totally right, totally left, and you can sound really great, but you're going to end up unhappy as well. So there's a certain amount of performance politics, I call it here in Vermont, that I felt I couldn't do that. I wanted to just be me and explain to people when they say, how do you feel about this issue? I'll give them straight up on how I feel about it.
Right. Yes.
And as I learn more about an issue, I might change my mind.
Yeah.
So don't elect me if you don't want somebody who can't change their mind.
Yeah. I'm wondering, how you're looking at what's coming next, what the future is, and you're a Brattle booster. Can you talk a little bit about Brattle boosting?
Well,
it's a great phrase. Did you come up with it?
I did. I think I did. Yeah. But I mean, obviously a booster, everybody knows what that is.
Yeah.
I want to help give a boost to the areas and the issues and the things I think Brattleboro should be working on, or maybe the directions I think Brattleboro should be going in. And right now it's simply a way, Brattle Booster is simply a way to articulate that that's not a comment on politics. It's, I want to lift the town up in good ways and trying to focus on positivity rather than
Well, the alliteration is good. It's like, I can't remember, Donna Simons and Greg Warden came up with Building a Better Brattleboro. And Brattleboro, I'm a Brattleboro Booster is a great bumper sticker. I think you could go somewhere with that, but you might have to do some printing.
We'll see. But I have to say that, that's funny. I have to say that I really don't know what direction I want to go in right now. I just want to be of service in some way and useful in some way. I have said that I do want to work as well as I can on housing. So I've joined the DRB, the Developmental Review Board, here in town. So that's a practical way. I'm going to help try to move housing along. I'm a big believer in ADUs, accessory dwelling units. Sort of bringing village center ideas to Brattleboro more and more to try to compact our footprint on not only the planet, but it's more efficient, and we can build within our footprint, existing footprint, rather than sprawl out.
And that's an idea to sell. I mean, in terms of word of mouth and letting people know about that this is cost efficient. The ideas that you're talking about, better people, and it's not even a short run, long run thing necessarily, but again, it's kind of giving people the information they need and how it will affect them personally.
Yep, yep. And so with my 6 years on the board and not quite knowing what direction I want to go, if I want to run for another office, the least I can do for the time being is help be that select board whisperer. To try to let people know, well, if you really want this, here's the time to approach the select board. If you want to have an effect on our budget, the time to do it is not December.
Right.
The time to do it is September,
Yeah.
August.
That, again, is a great descriptor. A select board whisperer is very good. Also, getting the word out, as you say, ahead of time, so that people can respond to new ideas instead of reacting, because that's what happens when you get in the voting booth, or when you listen to various people talk in October, November.
Absolutely. And if you're reading about it in the Brattleboro Reformer or the Commons, it's a little late.
That's right.
Because the discussions have already gone down the pipe. Not to say that you can't reach out and contact your representatives and select board members, but if you read something and you're surprised and outraged or super pleased, whichever end of the spectrum, that's a clue to you, I think, to try to plug in a little earlier in the process next time. Because things might be going down a path.
In addition to being a select board whisperer, in addition to having your heart in Brattleboro and doing the various things that help people to understand what's going on, and the fact that you've got a day job that keeps you very busy, and you've got a family in town.
Absolutely.
In Brattleboro, in the heart of Brattleboro.
Yes, yes. I was remarried and at the very late age of 50, had a new son. And wow, that's keeping me busy as well. My son is now 5 and just a delight. And talk about life taking turns that you never can imagine sometimes. He's my, it's a biggest delight to have this experience late in life, but I think young enough that I can still appreciate it.
Yes. What's his name?
Declan.
Declan.
Yeah. Declan.
Irish.
So, Irish, yes. Yes, because we took a romantic trip to Ireland. My wife and I, Erin is my wife, are both, and that means Ireland. Erin.
That's right, that's right.
So we both loved Ireland. It was both of our first times. So we had previous marriages. So it became our, felt like homeland.
Yeah.
And so when we became pregnant, we have to find a great Irish name. Now, if you've talked to any Irish people and you've looked at their names, you'll probably discover that they're always pronounced quite different from what you think they're going to be.
All those vowels, yes.
So Declan is one of the few that everyone looks at and knows how to pronounce it. It just felt like a really nice, strong Irish name and unique enough for the United States. Getting back to the future, it's just right now sort of taking it, not one day at a time, but a month at a time, and going on some nice trips. And he's in T-ball and doing all the things that 5-year-olds do.
Yeah, and it's a great community for all of that stuff. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
Tim, thank you so much.
Thank you. It was such a pleasure.
It was a fun
to
conversation.
Finally meet you and become one of the proud, the few, the proud, the guests on Wendy's show.
It was delightful. And thanks for all of that great information as well. We'll keep an eye out and see what you're doing. See how that whispering is going.
Thanks. And anybody who wants to watch that House Hunters episode, it's available for purchase on YouTube. But if you send me an email, I can send you a link.
We'll have some info at the end of the show.
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks. Thanks to all of you folks for being with us today. That was a really fun conversation with Tim Wessel, who is a Brattle Booster, which I think pretty soon all of us will have bumper stickers and various things that say Brattle Booster on them. I don't know why nobody thought of that before. Come back next time. We'll have someone from the community on telling their stories, and we look forward to seeing you.